Thank you for joining us on the Discover a Better You show. We're your hosts, Coach Christina and Coach Mary. We cannot wait to discuss relationship topics with you. We also love to hear your feedback. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Discover a Better You show. We're your hosts. I'm Christina.
And I'm Mary.
And we are excited that you're here today. Today we have a question from one of our listeners. And this question is, how does money mindset affect all of our other relationships? Our relationship to money is such a big thing, and we're going to talk about how it affects our other relationships.
Yes, absolutely. And how that plays into all of the spaces of how we show up to the relationship that we have with ourselves, because it also plays into the relationship with our money, our finances, and how we even approach that relationship in and of itself. So we're going to look at all the different angles.
Exactly. And I've heard so many people talk about this, and everyone's kind of got their own take, but really until you apply it into your own life and really delve into how you interpret money and what it is to you, you don't really know what a huge role it plays in your life.
This is true. And Christina, I know some of the insights and feedback, as well as what most clients bring into the coaching space. And it doesn't matter if it's in the private coaching or if it's in, just the spaces of corporate or working with clients and teams. What usually comes up in those spaces is all of the baggage, all of the different ideologies and all the different, I would say, limiting beliefs that people have around money, whether it's to the extreme of, I want to be a millionaire, billionaire, or whether it's, I don't think that's for me. I don't know if I can garner or gain, or if I'm worthy, or if I'm deserving of a healthy relationship with money. And that's usually the angle that I take from the coaching perspective. How can we support my client and have a healthier relationship with money?
Yeah, and as you coach so often in that more corporate space, how much does that money mindset affect where they feel like they can lead or not lead? Because are they worth it or not? Or, are they worth that role, that pay scale, or do they feel like that kind of determines like if there's a cap or not?
Absolutely. Great question. And yes, all of those elements play into it. People look at, there's a lot of comparison, especially in the work environments. There's a lot of, this person came in making this. Let's say someone has been there 5-6 years, or even, less. They've been there a couple of years, someone else coming in. It depends on the role, the job, and then their experience and their talent and certifications. All of those things play into what that person may be making, what their skill, the job requirements are. However, there tends to be a lot of conversation, a lot of talk amongst employees, even at the leadership level.
Right.
And even, at the leadership level, it becomes more egotistical, where
Right.
it's like, this person definitely shouldn't be making more than me because I do a heck of a lot more than they do. So
Right.
It really does get into the root of, and what I'm charged with at that point is partnering with the team or partnering with that leader to help them kind of scale and look at their own worth, look at their own value, and then look at what it is that they feel like they may be either missing or where they need to step up and say, no, I need an equitable balance of having the money and the value that I bring to this role be met in compensation or into balancing that. So it can be a bit tough, but we eventually get there. It's really just allowing people to reflect on where they want to land.
Right. Very true. And I find that a lot of times people are like, okay, well, this is how much I'm making, so I'm then worth more to whatever establishment, or, I find even in the home, I bring home this much, so I am up here. And because of that, I have the authority in the home. I see a lot of that as well.
Yes.
I'm
head of household, right?
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
That head of household. And that, in the climate that we're in right now, Christina, there are so many, again, elements that directly impact people because everything right now is people are really struggling to figure out, how do I manage all of the things that I have to pay for as head of household? And that can be twofold, because we have both men and women being head of household. We have situations where both men and women are both working outside of the home and having to care for one, two, dependents or more at times. We can even look at, mine and your situation. Like, we're empty nesters, and you have a total of, 5 kids collectively. But all of those elements, whether you're working outside of the home, whether you're working in the home, or working from home, the financial aspect of it and balancing what's healthy, because you could be making, enough money to cover your household expenses, and it could still feel like you're drowning, to be able to keep up with all of the things that you want to, really align yourself with, or really just kind of meet the measure of in your lifestyle, whether it's traveling, you want to just get a trip out this year, whether it's making sure that you're able to put food on the table, or even whether you're just able to cover your bills, as I was saying before. All of those things have an impact. So what you're taking into skill, credentials into your work environment can have a huge impact on whether or not you feel like you're being fairly compensated, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does make sense.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes to that pressure sometimes that people put on their shoulders to do all those things with money, even though money is our energy and our tool, if people use it as their standard for measuring their worth, or if they feel like, if I'm not providing this, if our family isn't doing these things, buying these things, then I am not adequate. And then it's putting that strain on all of their relationships. Yeah. So here they are thinking that that's the measure and that's the weight of their contribution to maybe their family, or maybe what they're adding to their, workplace value. But in reality, because they're putting that weight on themselves, they're saying, if I'm not here, then, now my relationships are actually suffering and straining, because I feel like I'm not being able to provide, and they're not viewing money then as a tool. They're viewing it as, a measurement instead.
Yeah. Such great points, Christina. I really love how you very eloquently and, with consideration, really laid out looking at it, as money and just your finances and the relationship that you have with money from an energy source, because it is energy. Everything is. And money is no, exemplification. I mean, it's not exempt from that. Money is also energy, and the relationship that you have with it. And if you begin to put your value, your worth as an individual, equating that to the money that you're making, or your overall, let's say, yearly salary or your yearly compensation, you can definitely get into some murkier waters, I think, because then you can start to conflate, like, your value and your worth with your money versus your skill and your experience and your expertise and what you're bringing into a particular role. But as we very well know, as you were, elated to, and that is, money is energy, and the relationship that you have with it can span all kinds of spaces. So I thought those were really great points that you brought into this conversation.
Thank you, Mary. I also just wanted to touch on, like, on the other end of the spectrum, how some people are judging themselves for maybe not making enough money in their mind. On the other hand, there's people that they almost feel like they're guilty if they are making a certain amount. And coming from a background in the church, a lot of times people I would have conversations with there would say, like, oh, I can't really make this much. I need to give this much away, and I need to do this. And they felt guilty about doing well and being successful. Yeah. And although, it's great to be able to give, to the less fortunate and things like that, it's also not, a sin to have money. It's not bad to have money and work hard for something and be proud of yourself, and just treat it as a blessing versus something that, it's shameful if you have too much money or if you're successful or doing well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, in the coaching space, those are, definitely concepts that we look to unpack. They go under the category of limiting beliefs or just assumptions that are often made about money and what it should mean in your life, which again goes back to the foundation of what is your relationship with money? And if you don't have a healthy relationship with money, it's okay to acknowledge that and say, I really never learned, whether it was through my religious organization, whether it was through watching my parents, or whether it's through just being an adult and really just finding myself constantly being challenged with how I spend money or how I show up to, support the money that I do have, or whether or not I'm a good steward when I do have my money. All of those things are definitely opportunities to put that on the table and say, what is the relationship I would like to have with money? And if I don't currently have a healthy relationship with money, how can I be more consciously aware of how I spend, engage, integrate, relationship, or balance the scale of me and money? All things are definitely primal to having a healthier, more balanced relationship with money. I love that you brought the element of, like coming from, people who have that guilt, because that's so very true.
I see that a lot. It's like, who am I to be able to have this? Well, you're meant to have an abundant life. You're not meant to shy away from all the blessings.
Exactly. Who are you not to have an abundance? In our world, right, Christina, we would say your birthright is abundance, and whatever aspect you feel is a fit for your lifestyle, your birthright is abundance, not just with money, but abundance with all things that you feel are a fit to the lifestyle that you're trying to create to serve the better good of yourself, your home, your family, and then your community, as well as any skill or service that you provide. Abundance is your birthright. So looking at it from that perspective. But again, if you don't have a healthy relationship, even with abundance, anything out of balance can completely put you in the disadvantaged category of I'm mismanaging it. So looking at those things, so that guilt doesn't become a part of that use or how you're usually, showing up to money. It's an opportunity.
Right. And I love that you said, just being a wise steward of money, that's the key. It's, if you have money that you're spending and wasting and doing things that you're going to later regret, of course, you're not going to have a positive relationship with money. But when you are a wise steward of it, and the things that you're doing with your money are bringing you joy, bringing others joy, and you're providing and bringing joy to your family, that's when you can say, like, I'm not regretting the way I'm using this tool, the way I'm using this energy.
Yes. Yes. So I think that kind of, positions us, Christina, to just allow our audience to kind of sit with a couple of questions. And one that I would suggest, and let me know if you're thinking of anything, but one question I would suggest that our audience sit with is, what is my relationship with money? What is my current relationship with money? And then I think a really great follow-up question would be, what is the relationship I would like to have with money? So one question, what is my current relationship with money? And then a follow-up, what is the relationship I would like to have with money? And then once you kind of examine, unpack, and look into those spaces, you certainly can reach out to either Christina or myself to unpack those concepts with, or just unpack, where you're sitting with those. In the coaching arena, you can reach out to either of us, but certainly something to take a closer look at, especially as we come into a new year. We're in a new season, and pretty soon we're going to be looking for our creativity and our ideas to really spring forward. So it's a really great time to have some introspect.
It absolutely is. And I want to add one other question to that. If you're unsure of how you're perceiving your relationship with money, or how you're really relating to money, and have a relationship with it, look at the way you're spending, how you're using that money, and then how those actions are then affecting your personal relationships, your interpersonal relationships. And if it is a positive interaction, that's saying that you're using your money wisely. You're using it as a tool. If you have a negative viewpoint of your relationship with money, most likely the way you're spending it, it's going to negatively impact the way you handle your interpersonal relationships.
Absolutely.
So you look at those things around your spending, around, what you're doing with your money.
Yes, absolutely. I think another way to approach understanding and holding a deeper awareness around money is also looking at the lack, which is an element of that guilt, I think. So many of us don't know, and I know in my world with coaching and working with clients, a lot of what I see as well is that people operating and functioning from lack or scarcity, and not even holding an awareness about like the lack or scarcity, the fear, and the fear saying, yeah, absolutely. That fear, lack, and scarcity mindset saying, well, kind of back to the point that you were saying earlier, well, who am I to have this money or to attract money or to be able to make it, and be able to sustain my lifestyle or have a lifestyle that I can sustain by creating or bringing in a certain amount of income. But that lack and that scarcity are both fear-based, and that's another element to unpack. You were attempting to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that if, also look at how the people in your inner circle are viewing your money and your success and things like that. And that is going to also play into your view of how you see money. If they're saying, if they're placing judgment on you, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be buying that, or you shouldn't have this type of lifestyle, check the people in your inner circle. They are definitely heavily influencing possibly the way that you view money. And that's also going to have you're going to have a reaction to their reaction to how you're spending your money and using your tools.
Yes, absolutely, Christina. Absolutely. Not only using those tools, but also determining whether or not those tools are beneficial, whether or not they're working for you, and whether or not it's time to put down those tools and pick up some new ones and resharpen those while you're putting some new tools into play. There are so many different ways for us, but all of it begins with starting with your relationship with money directly. Like, what is your personal relationship with money? And then just looking at the different ways that money shows up in your life, the way you spend it, the way it actually gets distributed, and then where that money is going. I often say to the clients that I work with, it would benefit you so much, like with anything. Most of us can only relate to, and this is why this analogy is given a lot, because people are more open to the analogy. It's like if you start working out and, initially it's a little, you're resistant, you're sore, and it takes you a while to really kind of get your groove or just get comfortable with the workout routine. It's the same thing with anything else. But of course, with money, it's a little bit more intimate for some because you're actually examining. And I always suggest, if you can, because it can be so intimate, try and keep a journal, try and track. There are so many applications right now, so many apps that are out there that people can use and download on their phone to simply track their money. Even with your banks have tracking options that you can use and say, I just want to categorize where am I spending, how often am I eating out? How often am I, just kind of like I go to Target. You hear so often, right, Christina? Someone will say, I'm only going to Target for laundry detergent or one thing. And you come out and you're like $150 later or, $200 later. And you're like, that's not what I went for. So having just a tracking and taking a quarterly review just to step aside and say, I'm going to go back and look at what we spent money on or what I spent money on, just to have a clear view of understanding my relationship with money.
Right. And like you always say, Mary, it's like you need to check your blind spots, right? Or somebody does. And so this is just a way to set up something that's checking your blind spots for you.
Yes.
The monitoring system in your bank. And then afterwards you review it. And it's not to shame yourself or feel bad about it. It's that awareness. And at that point, you can either say, this feels good and I'm okay with how I spent my money because it brought me joy and I don't feel bad at all. Or if you find yourself feeling like, ooh, didn't realize that, maybe that's not such a good idea, then you can reassess, and you have to have a starting point to measure where your progress is, as in anything.
Yes, absolutely, Christina. And if you're not comfortable getting in your blind spot, reach out. Partner with someone who can get in your blind spot, who has an objective view, someone who can certainly help you see maybe what you're uncomfortable seeing or what is too unsettling to look at, or it's just too overwhelming to look at. If you can sit down with you and your finances, sit down with you and your money, sit down with you and your income, not only during the times of, because we're going into our tax season right now, where people are going to be looking to file their taxes from 2023. So it's a perfect time to develop some consistency and, a really healthy relationship with money. It's a perfect time to just reset the dial. If for any reason you're functioning from a space of scarcity, fear, or just feeling like, me and money, I'd like to have a better relationship. If any of those apply to you, it's a good time to reset that.
It absolutely is. So, Mary, what is something that you think can point to whether or not someone has a healthy view and a healthy relationship with money?
Oh, I think that's an awesome question, Christina. And I think one of the things that points to having a healthy relationship or a view of your relationship with money is if you don't have the fear or the resistance with openly putting those, anything that's showing up with you and money, if you don't have the concern or the resistance of sitting down with it, if you find yourself avoiding or not wanting to really, you just want to get your money and pay your bills and move through and not go back and reflect. Anytime there's resistance to reflect and sit down and really get personal and intimate with the space that you want to improve, that's a telltale sign that there's unhealthy behaviors of avoidance there. It's an opportunity to really sit down and be clear. So I would say the number one thing is resistance. The resistance to really sit down and look at what's my history telling me? What is these last 12 months telling me? If there's a resistance to do that, let that little bell go off in your head and say, okay, I can acknowledge there's some resistance there. I'm not comfortable with that. I'd rather just keep moving forward and just keep making money or keep trying or keep struggling through or whatever the situation is. I'd rather just keep going and not reflect. Anytime you don't want to reflect, it's a telltale sign.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, Mary.
Yeah. What would you say?
I would say that if you are not willing to put those systems in place to check yourself, that's the second, kind of prong to that. So yes, first, the red flag would be, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't really want to see it. I'm going to kind of skirt around the idea and just pretend like I'm, just pull the wool over my eyes, right? So the second part of that is if you remain resistant to setting up checks and places to kind of reflect and dive into where your spending is going. And also, if you're afraid to say how it's making you feel. So those are, two definite things that would point to, okay, it's not really that healthy of a relationship with money. And I wanted to also ask you, what is something that you feel, if you are afraid to address those areas of concern, what is something that you can do that's maybe a small baby step toward that more positive relationship with money?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, again, like anything else in our life, it's a perfect opportunity. If you want to take a small step, break anything that you're afraid of, break it down into, if you're in the, I would say in the, in the work environment, if that's something, then break it down into small increments. You can always apply a SMART goal if you're familiar with that. If you're not, again, partnering with a coach or someone who has that language to support you in moving into a SMART goal where you can break it down where it's measurable, where it's attainable, where it's something that you can kind of look at it and it doesn't feel so overwhelming and finite. But then like if any, like with money, I would say, like that step of just saying, I want to just go to my bank or go wherever I'm doing my financial transactions. My first step is just going to be just to get the information in front of me. Today, I'm not going to even look at it. I'm just going to get it in front of me and then commit. Say, tomorrow, one day next week, I'm going to take a look at the first page, or I'm going to take a look at, my past week of spending. And you're not doing anything with the information. You're just familiarizing yourself with it. This really works. It can sound like it's something very simple, but it does work. It goes a long way into the next steps that follow after that. But that first step, break anything that you're fearful of, break it down into small increments. Like just take 5 minutes and be with that space or that thing or that resistance. Just be with it. And then the next steps will follow. If the commitment is there, the next steps will follow. But the first thing to do is just sit down with it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to take any action. There's no commitment to take action. It's just holding the space for the awareness of it.
Right. And you can't make any decisions without that awareness and without that knowledge. So whenever you are ready to make that next step, then you have all the answers that you need in front of you.
Absolutely. And what would you say, Christina, is a great first step to take?
I would say, what would you like to feel about money? And you had brought that up a little bit earlier as well, but I think those two, a combination of that education, awareness, just knowing, where your money is going, knowing how you feel about it, but then also additionally knowing what you want to feel when you are spending your money, what emotions you want to experience when you are using that energy towards things that you love to do, things that you want to do, or maybe things that you have to do. How do you want to feel about that relationship? And just kind of mapping that out. And because you don't know, you can't really work towards feeling a certain way or having a certain type of relationship with money, yourself, or someone else without first knowing how you want that relationship to be. What is your goal?
Absolutely, so Christina. I love that you shared that, because almost with anything that you want to move into a new direction with, I would absolutely say starting with how you want to feel about that direction is primal, because it helps you understand what your goal is. Even if your goal, you can put a number on it, or even if your goal is you want to put a time stretch on it, like, a limit on, like, I want to have this by this date, but how you want to feel is vitally important to understand. I think that helps with, the attainment of the thing in and of itself. I love that you brought that up. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining us. We love all of your questions, and we hope that you enjoyed us kind of diving into this conversation. If you would like to add to our next conversation or have a topic that you'd like to discuss, please message us, email us at info@discoverbetteryou.com, and we will see you next time. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Discover Better You Show. We love your feedback and we love your suggestions for topics. Please email us at